Hi guys, I'm Mike. I'm here at the Colorado Rural Water Conference, and I've got Aaron here with Sunrise Engineering and Caroline with WSP. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having us.
So a lot of themes at the conference is aging infrastructure. I know you guys might have some interesting ones to talk about. What do you guys kind of see that they're dealing with, or maybe that problems you're solving?
Yeah. Caroline can talk first about lead and copper, which is the big thing going on right now.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. We're seeing a lot of water utilities, agencies facing a lot of infrastructure issues. That's completely correct. One of them specifically is revolving around the upcoming lead and copper rule revision with the October 16th, 2024 deadline. So a lot of small water systems, folks that are attending this conference are struggling with how they identify their service lines, given the age of them, as well as the materials of those service lines to comply with that requirement. So the fortunate part is within Colorado, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment has provided a free technical assistance program to eligible water systems to allow us to develop their service line inventory to comply with that. So it's one thing that we found very beneficial and helpful to these systems that don't have really great data of their service lines, given the communities as well as the customer side. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to educate water systems that are smaller and let them know that this program is out there and that we can support them moving forward.
What's kind of like the overall approach for how you go and identify what they actually have? Are you digging up each spot, or are there some records that are considered sufficient? Because I'm guessing these communities, a lot of them were built in the 60s. They have lagoons and stuff. Like, it was just done by a developer. Where do you start?
I'll start, Aaron. You follow up if that's all right. So that's a great question, and actually something that we keep talking to these systems on, because when people hear about you have to identify the material of a service line, the immediate reaction is, let's go out, dig up that service line so I can meet that October deadline. That is not the case. The state, especially in Colorado, has requested that water systems review all available service line data. So that can be assessor information to identify the age of those service lines, operation and maintenance records, any asset management data that can be leveraged, even billing information. So that's the first step to comply with that October deadline. And that actually gleans a lot of information that allows Sunrise and WSP to develop that inventory. And not only that, but drive either a non-lead system or a lead galvanized requiring replacement, or even unknowns. And so I think that systems that have minimal data, we can help guide them in terms of how data is relevant and specific data points that can help us develop their inventory.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's it is daunting, like, for systems to try to figure out, like, how do we accomplish this? The EPA rule, if you're reading the EPA rule, it's kind of it's complex.
Yes.
And so for a small system that just has a part-time operator or a part-time staff, when they look at it, they're like, there's no way, like, what do we do here? So it's actually been really rewarding to work with a couple hundred systems that we've worked with so far. Sunrise is on the western slope and WSP from the Front Range East. And so as we've interviewed and talked with a lot of the systems, it is nice to be able to say, hey, all we really need from you in the beginning, if you have a list of your connections with addresses, we can start from there and help that way. And so it is really nice to be able to say, hey, you're scared of this, but we can help you through it.
So you're really trying to lower their threat level, because they're coming in saying, oh, I got 100 services I got to start digging up today because I have nothing. It's like, well, you actually do have some paperwork.
Yes.
You guys kind of walk them through that process.
And I think the EPA policy is very daunting. And I think the state of Colorado did a really nice job at taking the EPA guidelines and then tailoring it to the Colorado specific service lines and what they've seen with the water system. So specific to the program, I just wanted to highlight is that for the technical assistance program with the state, it's for small water systems, so 15,000 or less in population, and have 2 or more service lines. So that allows us to really hone in on those type of systems that can become eligible. And then not only that, but there's some really nice policy guidelines the state has put into place. So there's a lead ban of 1988 and on, that if you have service lines installed from 1988 to present, they're non-lead because of the ban. But if there's also local ordinances within water systems, we can also leverage that to identify a non-lead system. But even further down, the state has seen, based off of previous service lines inventories that have been submitted from 1960 to 1988, if there are all the data records have been reviewed pertaining to the service line inventories, and there have been no indication of lead service lines, lead service line replacement programs, or goosenecks, it can then be assumed that that water system is then a non-lead system. So it's really great that the state is trying to push water systems to review data, but also to hopefully push non-lead systems to eliminate further confirmation activities as necessary, but really support systems in moving forward with the compliance deadline.
So, yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of tools before you even need to put a shovel or backhoe on the ground.
Yeah.
And maybe I was just going to say one thing to think about too, if your audience is in other states, there's we're specifically talking about Colorado. It is an EPA rule, so it's nationwide. Sunrise specifically is worked on in other states as well too, but because small systems in all states have to be compliant as well too. There's tools from Esri, there's tools from other resources to be able to help small systems throughout wherever you are in the states too.
Yeah, I had on the show last year because it was really getting more traction. The lead and copper rule was in Texas. It was the Texas Water Board.
Oh yeah.
So they kind of are the driving force for financing those projects. I'm struggling to remember his name, but he was like the guy that reviews all these applications. And it was really neat. He's like, we have tools, and like no one's applying for these things. Like they couldn't beg people to apply for the grants.
Yeah. I also think, one thing that I think would be interesting is, and Aaron mentioned a good point, is that a lot of states are coming out with small water contracts. So like Sunrise is working on a few, we're working on a few. Obviously, we're working in collaboration in Colorado. But if you're a small water system, or maybe even a large system, I would even reach out to your regulatory agency and ask if there are grants, loans, or even if there's a potential option for them to develop a program for smaller systems. They might just need to hear that there is a need for this for small systems, and they just have it in the back of their mind and they're not pushing it forward. So I would highly recommend, if you're a small water system and you are struggling to do your service line inventory to be compliant, reach out to your regulatory agency and say, have you heard of this? I know Colorado, New York, Utah are doing it. So I think it would be cool to really speak to your regulatory agency to push those programs forward. Is
that more because like they always go to the state? The state's the one issuing the problems. Maybe they can help with the solution a little bit. Is that kind of where you're getting at?
That's what. I think so. And I think Aaron would agree with this. But a lot of the larger, even though there's larger water utilities, so let's just say larger water utilities with like 50,000 or more connections, they usually, even though it's more connections, they have usually better data, and it's easier for them to pull their inventory together. So in some cases, they have already submitted them and are more proactive in the replacement phase. Smaller systems, HOAs, they don't even know where to begin, because sometimes they're people who have just been thrown into these roles and don't even know what a service line is. So the state is putting some sort of requirement on them, but it would be nice if there was some sort of collaboration. And yes, we'll do this, but how can you help us move forward at that deadline? So yeah.
I think it is a challenge too, that here come these regulations that are hard for the layperson to understand and just to be compliant for it. And so, yeah, just like you said, it's important if you reach out for the help. The states are trying to be helpful, but ultimately one of the hard parts is the way the EPA rule is written is it is the responsibility of the water system to comply, which creates a challenge, especially on the small ones.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't something they were planning for. When it gets pushed on them from their perspective. It's getting pushed on them, and now they're having to react.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, they don't really have the capabilities to even look into the issue more.
Yeah.
Cool. Are there any other kind of interesting challenges you guys see out in the industry, kind of that the rural community is dealing with?
I'll speak to that for a second. The biggest challenge I think has always been, number one, planning, because systems, in order to address like their issues, a lot of systems we talk with, the small ones, that just say, oh, we don't even know where to start. We know we have problems. We have pressure problems, or we have storage problems. We ran out. We talked to a small town just recently who said, hey, we had a fire and we couldn't put out the fire for this apartment building and it burnt to the ground.
It was the first fire in 50 years or something.
Yeah. So they just
no idea.
And they're like, we called everybody around and we just couldn't put it out because there was not enough water. So the first step for them obviously was the planning, just to say, how do we solve this? What's the issue there too? And then next is always funding, is to try to figure out how to solve that. Sunrise specifically, we've actually made it the point for us to help water systems go get the funding, because that part is something that like is daunting as solving the real problem with
Yeah.
the water issues too. So
The people that solve the funding problem for them are called wizards.
yes,
That's what they refer to them. They're like, I don't know. No, Adam did some magic for me. That's
so yeah,
yeah. So
no, that's true. So because that's such a big problem.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and almost hand in hand with that, for us, what I like to see as one of the forefront issues is, and it's not something that's new, but asset management. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the lead and copper rule. You inventory your assets. A lot of people don't even know how to inventory this. But then once you've inventoried them, how do you then proactively manage, maintain, renew, replace those assets? So I feel like the lead and copper rule for the water side is at least a great point to start out. Okay, we now have a great inventory of our service lines. Now, how do we manage those assets effectively? So asset management can realm from very comprehensive data analytics, enterprise asset management systems side of things, but also can be very simple. It can be something that you review on an annual basis, and then also will support the funding side of things. So you have asset management protocols in place, which would then allow you to say, okay, at this time on this date, we then need to understand what operation and maintenance expenses we need to have planned, capital expenses planned, and then what funding, loans, grants do we need to go out for. So I do think that asset management, even though it's something that people hear as a buzzword quite often, is something that we need to like more proactively push agencies of all sizes to do. So,
well, I feel like just like with the funding, that is the next triggering. That's like the second most triggering thing.
yeah.
So the common theme I feel like I get from mostly operators and managers, well, this doesn't really apply to us. Like we don't need to do, like we've been operating just fine. If it's fine, leave it.
Right.
How do you,
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
which is like asking for trouble. And then some of them even, I'll go another step, is they'll, on the money side, they'll be like, well, I don't want to hold any cash because then I can't get any funding.
Right.
So how do you tailor the solution for them? Like, how do you pick which one? How do you guys go about that?
Yeah.
Just
So you just remind me of a story. We were working with a small system, and the operator had been there 35 years, and he was getting ready to retire, and his second man quit. Right. And so he's like on the door of retirement, and he's like, oh no, what do I do? Right. And so what he did is he called and he met us at a rural water conference, and he looked at some of our asset management stuff, and he said, hey, my new guy's going to start 2 weeks before I quit, before I retire. He's like, there needs to be a way to document everything that's in my head. And
35 years of experience in 2 weeks.
Well, and so he stayed on for 2 weeks after that too. And we sent some guys, and they rode around in the truck with him, took GIS points of everything, and he told them notes, and they typed it into the GIS system. And the guy, so his replacement had that as like, it was his Bible. His GIS was his Bible that he followed religiously for like the next 2 years. And so that he could know where things were, what the issues were, how to get through it, and things like that. So that was their customized way of doing it. But I think you're right. Like oftentimes it's going and sitting down and just like, let's see which of these options is going to be useful for you. Yeah. On the flip side, if his replacement was not technologically advanced, that wasn't going to be a solution, right?
Yeah.
He needs something different, right? And so we find that quite often is that it really just depends on how technologically savvy, what they're actually going to use, because the GIS system does nothing if the guys aren't going to use it, right?
Yeah. And I think completely agree with that statement. And I think also, though, every agency faces the issue of we need X amount of money, but in reality, we have half of that dollar value. So going hand in hand with the asset management, the great thing about asset management, it paints the picture of what you need. And then the data, you look into that more in terms of what is actually required to maintain your system. So criticality, likelihood, and consequence of failure, the condition of those assets. So I'm sure there's things that are per the useful life, things like that are required to replace in a year, but based off of the likelihood and likelihood and consequence of failure and condition, they could then be potentially pushed out 1 to 5 years. And then that obviously then brings down that threshold of dollars that you actually are able to attain. So you just really have to look at data and use the actual asset management attributes of that to leverage what is reality versus what you would actually like. So
how do you, I find myself constantly fighting the anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
A recent example is I'm working through a sewer project. It's like 30 miles total, and we're trying to figure out what's the worst area and whatnot. I go, okay, well, we should do an I&I study and figure out what parts have the worst.
Right.
That you can see it at the plant, like the huge spikes. It's like obvious.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, he thinks it's on the east side. I'm like, well, can you prove that? Right. And they can't.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let's stick some meters over there. Oh, I'm too busy to do that. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, we have this grant funding. Like we're supposed to, CDPHE wants us to go look at that. Like, how do you guys deal with those personalities?
Would you like to go?
As you're talking and walking through that, like I can picture a couple of times where we've been in meetings where you may not have the data you need, or everything's on a gut feel, or like, I think it's over here, I think it's over there, right? And we've had to sit back in the office and go, okay, well, if this is all the data that we have, what do we do next? And we try to take the approach of say, well, here's 3 alternatives. If it is that, then here's the solution to it, right? But here's another option to look at more data. Maybe we do need to hire somebody to come and do the meters because you guys don't have the resources to do it, right? Maybe we need to include that in the planning. Maybe that's another way to do it. And then maybe a third option is, hey, and we've done this in the past. We said, okay, so let's just say that we don't know, we don't have enough data. Here's the consequences of not doing anything.
Oh, that's a good point.
And then laying it out and saying, okay, and that is fully on the table. That is fully an option to have no, but here's the consequences of what happens.
That's a good point, because the fear is a good driving factor of sorts. And like, if this fails, then we're gonna have these issues down the road.
Yeah. And you remind me, because the other part. So I gave a presentation 2 weeks ago at the Utah Rural Water talking about operators are often put in this situation where they know there's a problem, but they might not have the public support or the support of their city council or their board, or whoever's in charge of them too. And so sometimes that's not in the wheelhouse of the normal operator to have to stand up in front of a board or someone and say, hey, this is our problem. And so they oftentimes rely upon the engineer to bring that data and to be the ones to say, well, here's what happens if you don't do something, and walk them through the process that way too. So not always a popular stance, but how do you make progress, right?
I like that. I've seen it both ways. I've been burned that way before too. Like they said it was a problem or wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
An example. I'll give you an example. It was, there's a well, and you turn the well on, the water comes out of the ground, like not like shooting, but bubbling.
Yeah. Okay.
You go, hey, there's something's wrong right there. Oh no, it's a natural spring.
Okay.
I've actually heard that twice.
Okay.
And we ended up doing some replacement, and you dig down and you're like, okay, like it was clearly wrong. Yeah. It's just, they can be so close to the problem and convinced it's the wrong solution.
Yeah.
Or evidence, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's why I lean on the data. Like,
you have to. Yeah. And I mean, I fully agree with what you were saying. Honestly, my feeling is leveraging asset management data, but you just have to paint the picture. Like, if you don't do X, Y will happen. So you have to show them all the consequences if you don't do what the data is forecasting. Some of it can be, you can do a lot of different options and you won't have as large of a consequence. But if you do nothing, usually the consequence is vastly higher in the sense of dollars, issues with the system or agency. So I just think painting that picture of these are all the potential things. And I mean, it doesn't seem like that's very difficult to do, but it just paints the narrative that then they can take to their board, their council members, their superiors and say like, well, what avenue would you like us to go down? And usually it is the operators who have that information, but
they have it. Yeah. Because they're there.
Boots on the ground. And those are the people that we really lean on in order to successfully operate these systems. So,
well, they're definitely a great resource to help you where to start looking.
Absolutely.
At first you have a system.
Yeah.
And then they can say, well, I've had issues here and there, and then you can start kind of looking and saying,
It's the
oh,
personality of the system.
the person, I didn't know systems had personality.
You know, like you put it in the ground and then it has to meld to whatever its environment is. I mean, just like the Colorado soil is not like any other soil. So it adapts to
Yeah.
wherever it's located. So
Good point. Love it. Okay. Do you guys have anything else to add? I think we hit all the points.
no, I think just we would really like to say that we're here to support any systems and any questions they might have on any water infrastructure issues, but also the lead and copper rule revision. We're here to support not only the Colorado state agencies, but anywhere throughout the United States. So we're very excited to be working together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks guys for sharing your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you so much.